After the American Civil War, the United States began looking outwards. One of the first countries on their list of possible conquests was the Dominican Republic. But this actually would have been a completely peaceful plan, as the people in the Dominican Republic actually seemed willing to be annexed. Then the takeover of the country would have served a couple of purposes. Obviously, it would have given the Americans a base in the Caribbean, and also prevent any Europeans from setting up a base there, thus defending the Monroe Doctrine. However, weirdly, in the Reconstruction period, President Grant believed it would help stop violent attacks from the KKK on black people, as many would have the option to emigrate to the Caribbean island. But before we move on to the video, it's time for Raid Shadow Legends. Now I know many of you will know this, but those who don't, Raid Shadow Legends is a fantasy-themed turn-based role-playing strategy game, and Raid Shadow Legends has just celebrated their 3rd anniversary as one of the top RPG games out there, as they're always adding new content, game modes and a lot more. And you can help me reach my goal of downloads by using the link or scan the QR code. And then if we do reach this goal, I'll give you a shout out in the next video. They've got special events every single day, including an entirely new event for the summer solstice. It's called the Path of Light, and you'll be able to explore 3 branching paths to get the rewards you most want. On top of that, there's some awesome new champions coming out, and a set of skins for the amazing Trunder Guilt Mallet. And as always, Raid's getting bigger and better every single month. For instance, Raid's currently running a special Deliana chase event where you can get your hands on the amazing Deliana, a brand new legendary champion from the High Elves faction, just by logging in. All you have to do is log in and play Raid for 7 days between now and July 20th, and you'll get Deliana for free, that's it. And all new players just enter the promo code MyDeliana to get your hands on 50 XP brews to get your legendary hero to max level 50, as well as a ton of silver. Once you're in-game, you can redeem all of your rewards from your inbox here. So just click the link in the description and get ready for a whole host of new content, and I'll see you in-game at Raid Shadow Legends. American interest in the Caribbean actually predates the 1860s, and strangely, it was the slave owners in the South who had the most bold plans of conquest. They formed groups like the Knights of the Golden Circle and hoped to annex slave-owning Caribbean islands and even parts of Central America. Robert Barnwell Rhett declared, "We will expand as outgrowth and civilization demand over Mexico, over the Isles of the Sea, over the far-off southern tropics, until we shall establish a great confederation of republics." This group actually had supporters in high places, and under Franklin Pierce, the Ostend Manifesto was created. This was the plan to purchase Cuba from Spain and just conquer it if they refused. Then Cuba would be made into a slave-owning state of the Union, thus balancing out the government again. Then the middle of the century saw filibusters try to launch invasions across the continent. Most famously, William Walker successfully took over Nicaragua, at least for just a little while. Then, even before that, during the Mexican-American War, some actually called for the complete annexation of Mexico, rather than just settling for California and the likes. So the Americans, albeit the southern slave-owning Americans, were keen on expanding. But the quest to annex the Dominican Republic came from the north and President Grant. Well, actually, the idea was first floated about in 1867 when Andrew Johnson was president, when the Dominicans actually approached the Americans about the possibility. But to understand this, we need to look at the history of the country. The country was historically Spanish, but during the French Revolutionary Wars, it was taken over by the French. But there was the slave rebellion in neighbouring Haiti, and during this, the Spanish émigrés, along with the British, sailed to the island and recaptured the east. So the island was divided between the Republic of Haiti and the Spanish-owned, slave-owning Santo Domingo. This existed until 1821, when the people of Santo Domingo rose up against the Spanish and declared independence. But they were well aware that they were vulnerable to attacks. They even began to look into becoming part of Gran Colombia, but almost as soon as the Spanish left, the Haitians invaded, and they ruled the country for the next couple decades. This period is not remembered fondly in the country. After all, the largely French-speaking Black Haitians ruled over the Spanish-speaking half of the island. But in 1844, the Spanish speakers rose up in rebellion, and after a 12-year-long war, were able to gain their independence. But the same problem existed. They were once again open to invasion. Maybe the Haitians would rebuild and reunite the island, maybe the Spanish would come back, or maybe even the French would. The Americans actually began exploring the possibility of securing a port in Samana in the 1850s when William Casno was the US envoy, but foreign opposition and then the US Civil War largely dashed those plans. And then Pedro Santana, a hero of the revolution, became president of the Dominican Republic. He ousted his fierce rival Buenaventura Baez, who had ruled over a financially struggling country, while Santana would spend most of his time rounding up suspected traitors, many of whom he had previously fought alongside. Then, fearing an invasion, he just offered the country up to the Spanish in 1861. Isabella II of Spain took up the opportunity to reclaim some lost land in the Americas, as the Americans themselves were in no real position to defend the Monroe Doctrine. So, in the last few decades, the country was ruled by the Spanish, French, Spanish, Haitians themselves, and then the Spanish again. But many people were of course angry about this, and they received support from the wary Haitians. So the Restoration War was fought, in which the Spanish lost thousands during guerrilla attacks. The Spanish then just withdrew in 1865, and the country was free again, and this, finally, is when they began looking to be annexed by the Americans. After all, their country had been left in ruins, banditry was rife, and their economy was failing. Plus, they could always just be annexed by someone else, possibly the Haitians again, or someone in Europe. Buenaventura Baez was back in power, and he met with the Americans to discuss the possibility of annexation. Plus, at this point there was actually a bit of a rush to secure their borders, as the Cubans had rebelled, but the Spanish were unwilling to lose their colony, and so the 10 Years' War had begun. This meant that the Spanish were fighting in the region, worrying both Baez and President Grant. So Grant sent Orville E. Babcock to find out if the plan could work, and fortunately for the Americans, speculators like Joseph W. Fabens had already formed the Santo Domingo Company to encourage foreign investment, and Fabens would actually present the plan of annexation to Hamilton Fish, the Secretary of State. But he was initially suspicious of the plans, believing the country was far too unstable. They discussed the numerous foreign loans the country had taken out, like the Hartmont loan, which they could probably never repay. Babcock stated that this would be used by the British to expand their own influence, and Baez agreed, believing the Americans would bring stability, end the insurrections, pay off the debts and the likes. Baez then allowed the US Navy to protect his country, while he held a plebiscite. There 10,000 people voted in favour of annexation, while only 11 people voted against, so this seems like a bit of a rigged election. However, all seems set for the takeover. America would take on the $1.5 million debt, and they would lease Samana Bay for $150,000 a year. And remember, expansion was not new to the Americans. They had, after all, just purchased Alaska in 1867 for $7.2 million. So this whole thing just seemed to be a given. Babcock returned to the United States, and the formal annexation treaty was drawn up, and the plan received support from across the political spectrum. As I mentioned before, Grant believed that this new country would provide a possible home for many blacks who wanted to leave the country. This is because the KKK were stepping up their attacks, and of course many people wanted to flee. But Grant also believed that this would sort of reduce the number of attacks, as once people began to emigrate, there would be a desperate shortage of labour, and out of necessity, the white people would stop attacking the black people. That was the theory anyway. Also, Frederick Douglass also lent his support to the project as well. This may seem hypocritical, as he long argued against American expansionism, but he was actually sent to the country along with Babcock, and he came back believing annexation would be best for everyone. Some of his points, however, were not actually the best. For instance, he said, "Nations must be able to exist either by love or fear, and Santo Domingo can win neither love nor fear. Small and weak nations are plainly out of joint with our times, and are going out of fashion." Many argued with him, saying the country should be allowed to follow its own destiny, but Douglass responded, "Why should Santo Domingo, if she wishes to otherwise, be left alone to work out her own destiny? Why should a people who have annexed Texas, Louisiana, California raise the question of destiny against Santo Domingo?" So why he felt so inclined to support annexation is actually quite hard to grasp. But despite the support of Douglass, the president, and even the locals, the plan failed. Charles Sumner and the liberal Republicans completely opposed imperialism in the Caribbean. They believed it was nothing but a corrupt plan led by big business, and they believed it would ultimately lead to the destruction of the Haitian Republic. As he said, the island of San Domingo, situated in the tropical waters and occupied by another race, never can become a permanent possession of the United States. It is theirs by right of possession, by their sweat mingling with the soil. These liberal Republicans got support from the Southerners, who disagreed with the country absorbing a nation of non-whites, and thus opening the door to immigration. So the treaty was defeated in the Senate, but only barely. 28 voted to annex, 28 voted against, and 13 didn't vote. This was as close as it could get, and had Grant just been a little bit more convincing, maybe the Dominican Republic would have been part of the United States. Then, who knows, maybe Haiti would have joined, maybe Cuba would have been annexed after the war with Spain, and the Americans would have created a Caribbean empire. But it wasn't to be. And this split in the Republican Party led to the formation of the Liberal Republican Party, which ran against Grant unsuccessfully in the 1872 election. But do you know of any other strange annexation plans? One that comes to mind for me is the English refusing to buy Iceland. But if you have any others, leave them in the comments below.